Thank you so much for sparing the time to join us today. This is a Careers in Legal Tech webinar in partnership with the European Legal Tech Association, ELTA for short. I'm a proud British ambassador for ELTA and have been working with them for the last few years. They do a fantastic job across the whole of Europe in spreading the word about legal tech. So today we have a fantastic panel of experts joining us who've each managed to forge their careers in this exciting area. We'll be discussing legal tech careers, including types of roles available, career paths, recruitment challenges, and compensation information. And after the discussion, we'll have an opportunity for you as audience members to ask questions. So feel free to put some questions in the chat, and we'll try to ensure as many questions are answered as possible during today's session. So without further delay, I'm very delighted to introduce our esteemed panelists today. We have Bhavisa Patel, who's Director of Legal Technology and International Operations at Eversheds Sutherland. Welcome, Bhavisa. We have Lauren Watson, Head of Product Marketing at Robin AI, one of the UK's leading legal tech companies. And Lauren is also Chair and Executive Board Member of the UK LTA. Also, we have James Tapscott joining us from Dubai. He's a Senior Manager, Innovation and Legal Technology at Addleshaw, Goddard. And last but not least, we have Paul Levy, my colleague, who's a Senior Consultant at Jameson Legal Tech. So without further ado, it'd be great if each of you could briefly describe your journeys into legal tech and what your roles involve. Thank you so much. Maybe starting with Bhavisa, if that's okay.
Thanks, Jeremy. So good morning, everyone. So I actually joined Eversheds 8 years ago, but prior to that, I did a few years in insurance services, and I've always kind of been on more of the industry-specific side of technology, as opposed to kind of the IT or the technology that you need to run an organisation. So I joined the firm 8 years ago now, and started dabbling in delivering technology outside of the day-to-day. So looking at things beyond kind of just keep the lights on technology. And then over the course of the years, probably about 7 years ago, the firm's strategy changed because they started to understand the evolution and the trend towards legal technology and how it could really support the firm. So I started to get more involved in kind of the innovation and the legal tech side. And as we started to delve deeper into that, we started to gain some real traction, get some real successes, and start to deliver some real benefits and efficiencies across the firm. So from that, the responsibilities grew and kind of the need for a more dedicated team in the space grew, which is what's led me here today.
Fantastic. Thanks, Bhavisa. I mean, your role has really evolved over the years, and it's exciting to see how that's happened. Moving on, Lauren, could you tell us a bit more about your current role and how you sort of got to that stage?
Yeah, of course. Great to see everyone today. So I'm one of those people who studied law for 5 years and then realized after that endeavor that I did not want to be a lawyer, which was a great use of time and money and all the rest of it. I'm kind of joking because I do still think it's valuable. I actually started at Jameson Legal and worked for Jerry for a couple of years. It's going back quite a while now. And then made the move into a business development role and a partnerships role with a company called Crowd Justice, which actually recently sold to Crowdfunder, and that was the UK's first crowdfunding platform for legal matters. And we worked on like a huge range of kind of public interest type litigation, including like the prorogation of Parliament case, and it was just a really exciting and interesting sort of access to justice company, which was really what I wanted to kind of focus on, was access to justice, access to legal services. I then worked with that CEO, her name is Julia Solaski, and she founded a company called Legal, which is kind of back office operations, payments, conflicts checking, AML for law firms in the UK, and worked there for 5 years, scaled the sales team, raised Series A, Series B. By the time I left, the sales team was about 15 people. And I'd actually moved into a kind of go-to-market strategy role, which was focused on how we position the company, how we launch new products. And that's really where I realized like where I really wanted to specialize in my career was in product marketing. Like, how do you position a company, talk about the use cases, bring new features, bring new products to market. And I joined Robin AI as head of product marketing over a year ago now. And then you mentioned, Jerry, but my kind of side hustle is as chair of the UK LTA. And that's really an organization that's focused on how we connect small, medium-sized law firms in the UK with technology, legal technology, helping to further adoption of legal technology. I think we've got some great representatives from kind of big law on the call, and they're obviously like very privileged that they can have sort of James and Bhavisa and all these wonderful people to help further their agenda. It's not always the case with small, medium-sized law firms. So yeah, I'm just very passionate about how businesses can how businesses can adopt legal technology and what things we can do to kind of improve that adoption.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lauren. It's clear sort of how passionate you are about the legal tech sector, and it's great to see how you've worked through different areas, including the access to justice side and the more commercial side. There's still a role for you back at Jameson Legal whenever you want, so just keep that in mind. In that regard, moving on now to Paul as well. Paul, you've had an interesting career before you've moved into legal tech recruitment, so it'd be great to hear more about that.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Hi, everybody. So I started out my legal sales journey, if you like, in 2008. I went to work for a small company at the time called Practical Law Company. There's only a couple of hundred people there, and that grew and grew and grew to the point where it was the right opportunity for a company called Thomson Reuters to acquire it, and then became part of the big juggernaut that is Thomson Reuters. Moved on from there, stayed in the legal sales space. I'm a salesperson by heart, by trade, if you like, and worked at a legal tech startup that was quite specifically focused on the equity capital market space. Left there, set up my own recruitment business, but right around the corner from the pandemic, which I had no idea about. And then that all went, I left that all behind, and eventually worked for the Legal 500 rankings business. And then present day, last couple of years, I've been here at Jameson Legal helping all sorts of people within their careers to move either into legal tech or move through the legal tech space to progress their careers. So been thoroughly rewarding and really interesting to hear people's journeys and what they're trying to do with their careers and their lives as well. So thoroughly enjoy what I do as well.
Great, thanks, Paul. And moving on to you, James. It'd be great to hear more about your career in legal tech as well.
Thanks, Jeremy, and thanks everyone else for bearing with me while I sorted out my tech issues. What would a tech webinar be without some tech issues, right? So I started my legal tech journey just over 10 years ago when I was doing private client work, and we were doing a lot of will drafting. And within that, we had this kind of rudimentary bit of software that allowed us to put some of the components of a will together much quicker. And that was my first real taste of legal technology and how law and tech could be used. And it really, really fascinated me at the time. And ever since that moment, I realized I want to be involved in law, but I also have a real kind of passion for the tech side of it as well. I think I was quite lucky that it's still fairly junior back then. It wasn't as mature as it is today, that's for sure. So being able to be kind of at the early stages of legal technology and working my way through it, focusing on the documents, how we draft documents, how we get data, all of these different kind of aspects of legal technology that's matured really quite rapidly over the last 10 years. That's where I came from. I think it's a really, really interesting industry to be in because it's so changing all the time. And it's a really different path to stay into law. So a lot of people want to go into law. They might not necessarily want to stay as a lawyer, but it's a really good path to go down if that's what you're thinking to do.
Great, thanks, James. Yeah, it's really interesting to see how all of you sort of come into the industry. It's not as structured as a legal career, but it's leading to lots of interesting new roles, and it's constantly changing. So in that regard, sticking with this, Paul, it'd be great if you could briefly describe for the audience some of the different types of roles available in legal tech that you see as a recruiter. that mix between law firms, tech companies and consulting companies and others. If you could let us know a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's really great about the role that I play is that I get to see the sort of landscape evolving from all sides. So I work with law firms to help them find, legal innovation specialists, legal technologists. I think one of the fundamental aspects here, when someone's searching for a job, there isn't the right a taxonomy in place at the moment, like there is on the legal side. You're going to be maybe a paralegal or a trainee and then associate and a managing associate, and then you sort of make that track to partner. There isn't that kind of that staging, if you like, in legal technology or in the innovation side of things, because everybody does things very, very slightly differently. So, law firms have sort of legal innovation or knowledge innovation or legal technologists or product owners. There are various different titles, even business analysts, for more broadly speaking, for certain roles that will have duties, but I think it's more the job description that you ought to pay attention to rather than the job title. Although I appreciate when you're searching, the job title is obviously what's going to bring up the search results. Moving into in-house, they're quite structured in the sense that everyone kind of sits under legal operations, the title of legal operations, specialist, manager, director, whatever that may be. But with software companies, generally tend to help them with the growing of their annual recurring revenue. So that's salespeople, that's new business people, also customer retention, which is fundamental, making sure that the customer is getting the best value from the subscription or from the product or service or solution that they've paid for, and also help with product management as well. So people that are looking to help, get into the real grass and the real roots of what people's pain points and problems are, and help to provide a solution that really does help to solve that in a real easy and meaningful way. So it's really quite broad, really quite varied what I get. And the types of people that I've been speaking to are real cross-section, people that have nothing to do with legal in the past, people that are keen to get into this sector because it's exciting and developing and hasn't fully developed yet by any stretch. And also people that have done a law degree or are doing a legal course of some sort, a master's or the SQE, but actually don't want to necessarily be a lawyer or go on that partner track, much in the way that Lauren decided after 5 years that she didn't want to go down that route, and then pivoted. And those are the sorts of conversations that are really interesting to me, but also not discounting those that are in this industry already and looking to further their careers and progress. So yeah, and I think that's the thing. If there is sort of away from this, is that there isn't, as I say, there isn't that kind of real guided track. Everything's kind of still being played out at the moment. The playbooks aren't fully written. The paths are not fully laid. So yeah, that's probably the one thing that I would urge, impart on people is that side of things. Is don't worry about job titles so much. It's really about what the job's actually doing.
Just to jump in on that, Paul, I couldn't agree more with that. So I think my first title would have been some sort of editor. My second title was then knowledge engineer, which I haven't seen for a long time, which is one of my favorites, to be honest. My friends always got to laugh at calling myself a knowledge engineer. And then we moved on to law tech, then we moved on to legal tech. So you're right, the titles change so often and so much, it's hard to say what that role is. So it is all about what the focuses of the role would be. Especially nowadays, legal technology is really vast. So you might have a specialism within legal technology, whereas 5-10 years ago, you would be a generous legal technologist. But now we have things like automation editors. We have kind of more internal efficiency focus. We have more client focus. So you're right, the job spec and the JD is much more important than just what the title says.
Yeah, thanks, James. And just I know that's not helpful when you're putting your search job title in LinkedIn as to what that might come out as. But I think if someone is typing something in, the devil as always is in the detail. So like you say, it's really about what that job actually entails rather than the actual title itself. Thanks, James. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I mean, 20 odd years ago when I gave up being a lawyer, there weren't that many options. I ended up falling into recruitment, but it's great to see now there's so many other opportunities for lawyers who don't want to be lawyers anymore, and moving into legal tech is definitely one of them. Also interesting what you said there about Paul about the roles in legal tech companies being about getting the ARR up for entities, because it's all about building the revenue and the valuation of the company. In a similar way in law firms, but more towards efficiency and building more profitable tech to allow the company and their clients to do better.
Yeah,
It's great to see lawyers
absolutely.
being commercial in that sense and legal technologists.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of tech out there, a lot of shiny stuff that looks great when the sun's shining, but actually, is it robust enough to withstand the rigor of actual frontline fee earning? James and Bhavisa and Lauren will have a much better answer than that on that than possibly what I can communicate. But I think there's a lot that are raising money, but it's really all about the how good the solution is and what problems it actually solves. There are nice to have, which are great and lovely and wonderful, but actually the must haves are really the ones that really solve a real problem that a lawyer would be facing, or a legal team.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously within the legal tech space, we've seen a lot of money coming into the sector, a lot of startups who are looking to recruit the right people, and a lot of law firms are building teams from scratch and being put under a lot of pressure. So in that regard, I'd be keen to ask the panel about the challenges they're facing in terms of recruiting, where they're going for recruits, and what sort of successes they've had in that regard. So Bhavisa, I'd love to ask you first about that.
Yeah, thanks. So I would say the biggest challenge I have is it's a competitive market. Getting people with a digital skill set and a digital mindset is really challenging. And it has been even more so since COVID. I think people have become more aware of what technology can give them and the efficiencies it can really bring. So they're really, really keen to bring that digital skill set into organisations and law firms in particular. So from my perspective, getting people with that right skill set is really hard. At the same time, law firm cultures are, they've got a very specific culture, I would say. And Paul knows this because we work together on recruitment a lot. I tend to focus a lot on the personality and the culture fit, because for me, you spend so much time at work, you spend so much time working and being around the people that you work with. If they're not going to get on together, then that doesn't make for a good environment, and that doesn't help to lead towards good deliveries and good solutions. So for me, it's finding that skill set, but also finding the right personality to match the team that I already have.
Brilliant. And what are your thoughts on that, James?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the market for legal technology and the people out there is quite small. If you look at it kind of quite black and white, if you want to be a lawyer, you go into lawyering. If you want to do technology, you go into a tech company. So finding that person that wants to do a bit of both in the middle is actually quite a small market. We do things to kind of help grow our own talents. We run a graduate scheme where we have a 2-year kind of graduate course. It's very similar to a lawyer doing different seats. They'll do different seats within our legal technology team to give people a flavour of what being a legal technologist is about, give them a holistic view of what you could be doing in legal tech. And I think that works really well, because it's not for everyone. We might have people that drop off after 2 years and realise legal tech's not for them. They might want to go back and do the legal route or go further into the tech way. But finding people and retaining people that know the market and know they want to stay in legal tech as a career is quite challenging. That is a hard thing to do. So when you do get these people, they're very competitive, and lots of people want to have them because it's a small market. So lots of law firms are competing for the top talent.
Thanks, James. I mean, just in that regard, we're talking about new entrants to the market there, and doing that course is really innovative. Not many law firms are doing that currently, or they're only offering it to a small number of people. So it's great to see that is sort of growing, certainly at your firm. In terms of more senior hires, I'd be keen to get Paul's views on this. What sort of issues are you seeing in terms of recruitment challenges for more senior hires into those entities that you mentioned?
Yeah, opportunity fundamentally. Obviously, the higher up the career pyramid one goes, the fewer the opportunities become. And when senior people want to move on, they're obviously at a certain salary standpoint and an obvious career point that actually it needs to kind of be a step up. And there just isn't, from what I'm seeing at the moment and the conversations that I've been having with people, there isn't a glut of opportunities for people to either laterally move to take another business further forward, or to go in and to help bring up a software company, or grow their careers further. So it has become a bit of a challenge, finding more senior people opportunities that are actually going to be enticing and interesting from a day-to-day, month-to-month basis, but also fundamentally from a financial basis. Although quite warmingly, a lot of the people that I speak to in this industry that are looking to move roles is more about opportunity than it is about money. Money is important, don't get me wrong, it's what pays the bills and keeps the lights on at home, but fundamentally people are, want that mental stimulation, that next step, that evolution in their career, and that excitement to be able to lay foundations somewhere, and that's the struggle at the moment.
Great, thanks, Paul. And Lauren, obviously you're working in an entity that's been heavily funded and you're under pressure to grow and build very quickly. What challenges are you facing in that environment?
I would say, because I work in an AI company, obviously for the more technical roles, so LLM research engineers, people who work on the R&D team, I would say like explicitly looking for people not from a legal background for those kind of roles. But I think I actually was reflecting on this before I joined this webinar about, I get so many DMs from people asking me like, how do I get into legal tech, who are qualified lawyers? And I used to think it was like basically impossible. Like if you hadn't had some kind of, if you weren't willing to completely start your career again, go into sales, go into customer success. This is for working in a tech startup specifically, as opposed to kind of working in-house at a law firm. It was honestly like so challenging. But I think the amazing thing about the progression of legal AI is that there are whole new teams now of qualified lawyers doing roles which literally did not exist 2 years ago. So we have an entire legal engineering team at Robin AI. They're all ex-lawyers. They're all evaluating models. They're all extremely technical. They can do sophisticated prompt engineering. And so I think like there is a lot more opportunities now for qualified lawyers to move into legal AI, legal technology roles than there ever was before. I think the challenge with hiring is, I think if you've worked in a law firm for a long time, it's really difficult to understand how scrappy startup life is, especially when you're very early stage. So I work with Julia Salaski, the founder of Crowd Justice and Legal, when we were 0 employees, 0 revenue, and grew the whole business to Series A, Series B. Those times you have to be someone who, if you don't know something, there's no one else who's going to sort that out. Like you just have to sort it out. So it's an insurance question. It's how do you hire for some random role that you've never worked on before? How do you organize an event from scratch? And you just have to be willing to jump in and do those things. I think as tech companies get more established, the roles become more defined. You want to move away from having generalists onto people who do more specialist work. But it's really about being agile. And I don't mean in terms of like the agile kind of methodology. I mean more agile in terms of the entire company direction could change tomorrow based on a new piece of information or a new development in an LLM, or it's like something that's like just completely unpredictable, uncontrollable when you're working like at the very forefront of new technology. And so I think it's being able to sort of thrive in the chaos is probably how I would describe people who function well in very early stage startups. That said, there's like a ton of very well established kind of like legacy legal technology companies that are basically like working in big corporates. And that's more where you would go if you were looking for a stable, well-defined kind of life, I think.
Thanks, Lauren. It's really interesting. That sort of horses for courses approach for the type of career you want in legal tech. So going with your eyes open. And Bhavisa as well, thanks for that. In terms of building teams and going for personality as a key thing, I definitely think that's incredibly important. And because there isn't that structured approach maybe to getting into a role in legal tech as there is in law, it's great that you have more opportunity to build the teams you want from more diverse backgrounds as well. So thanks for that. Moving on, would be keen to sort of inform the audience a bit more about the types of compensation benefits available within the different entities hiring people in legal tech. So maybe if I can just go back to you, Lauren, with regard to sort of the legal tech company and the situation that you've seen with startups, and then get a bit more maybe from Paul on the law firm environment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a risk moving to an early stage company. And so I think one of the main things that I often speak to about when I'm speaking to lawyers who are looking to move particularly out of private practice into startups is, everyone sometimes people ask me like, where, you know, like where would my role be in 5 years? And I was like, mate, I don't know if the company's going to exist in 5 years. You know, like that's really why we've got to, you know, that's the kind of level of attitude that you need to bring to the table, is like completely self-starter, risk taker, someone who wants to take ownership of stuff. You can't, there's nowhere to hide. I think law firms are a great place to hide because you can hide, you know, it's a big organization, you can kind of hide and get away with, there's no hiding in startups. Like you are either there delivering 100% of the time, or, you know, you can't be there, you won't be there for long. So the advantage of taking a big risk is that there's potentially a big reward. So early stage startups, you will get normally significant equity in the company, depending on like the kind of seniority of the role. I mean, heads up to any qualified lawyers on the call, like you will earn less than you earn in big law. Like if you're in a Magic Circle law firm and I think they're paying NQs like 150K now, like, no, you're not going to walk into a job like as an NQ and be making like that kind of money in legal tech. But what you're doing is embarking on a very exciting career journey where there's very fast career progression and opportunities to take on new skill sets, learn different parts of the business, become like a really senior operator. But the way that the compensation is structured is much less about the base, much more about bonuses if you're in sort of like client-facing roles, and equity. And that's really to make sure that everyone's sort of motivated by the long-term success of the company. Making sure that everyone has skin in the game means that people are all kind of like motivated to pull in the same direction to make the company successful. Will you ever make as much as a Magic Circle partner in legal tech? Like, I don't know. Unless your company becomes like one of the sort of like billionaire unicorn type $1 billion plus valuation companies, and you had loads of equity and you joined really early on, that's probably the only route to make the kind of money that you would make if you're an equity partner in a Magic Circle firm. But I would say like the next generation of legal tech companies do pay well. Like it's not, yeah, I think a lot of lawyers are kind of coming to me and being like, oh my God, am I going to drop to like a minimum wage? Like, no, like it's a good salary and a salary you can live on in London. And like, you're very well compensated. But if you're doing an apples to apples comparison with what would you make as a partner in some like Magic Circle law firm, that's just like a silly comparison to make, because it's just structured in a very different way. The way that the compensation is put together is very different. That was a very waffly answer, but
no,
thanks, Lauren.
but I think you've hit on quite a few good points there, Lauren, because I think if you're looking at moving away from being a frontline lawyer, it's because you're not enjoying that work. You're probably not getting the work-life balance that you want either, which is how do you put a price on having your weekends and evenings to yourselves and not being like called at the very last minute Friday night to suddenly go and do a whole review of a whole group of documents that are going to take you all weekend, and you're going to miss out on family time and important time on holidays and that kind of stuff. So I think no, that's spot on. And I think also to add to that as well, I think with tech companies, it also depends perhaps where they are in their fundraising cycle, perhaps how much the company's already making on their annual recurring revenues as well. So I think there's no kind of one size fits all, and everybody is slightly different. But yeah, there is always the huge risk that it doesn't work out.
Yeah, and I would say that like for certain roles in tech companies, you can make an absolute fortune. Like the best tech salespeople make obscene amounts of money.
Yeah.
So like there are ways to do it if you're money motivated, but you don't like working in a law firm. In my experience, lawyers don't typically want to do that kind of sales roles. They're more, I kind of divide sales roles into sort of hunter, new business type roles, and then farmer, like helping businesses to grow type roles. The growing roles pay less than the hunting new business type roles, because again, it's like less risk in those types of roles. Most of the lawyers that I know go into either kind of subject matter expert type roles, so doing content, you know, almost acting like a PSL but internally in a technology business. So if you've got lots of tech people who don't have a legal background, kind of upskilling people on use cases and challenges and things, which I think is a really interesting option. Or businesses like Robin AI, so where I work at the moment, we have a 70+ person team of qualified lawyers who actually provide a managed service which is powered by AI. So they also do all of our product testing and whatever. So there's cool opportunities. Will you get paid as much as Magic Circle? No.
Great, thanks for both of you to that. Just moving on, I've got some questions in the chat from some of the audience, which I think would be worth going through now. We wanted to go on to talk about how people get into the industry and forge a career in legal tech. So, question from Anatoly: do you think it's important for those who come into legal tech from an IT background without a legal background to pursue additional legal training to better understand the work and the product through courses, etc.? So, James, can I ask you that question? Get your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's no set person that you want within legal technology. When I first started hiring, I always wanted a very specific 50-50 mix, wanted 50% law, 50% technology, because that's what you needed at the time. You needed to have passions and needed to have an interest and understanding of both. I think the more mature we get as an industry, we're able to train people up on the bits that they might not necessarily have. So now when we do our graduate scheme, for instance, we don't require any specific background. It's, do you have an interest? Do you have an appetite? Do you know about our company? Do you want to be here? And then we've got a really kind of like mature training program to get people to the level that they need to be. I think for a couple of examples, one of the best performing graduates, she was a chef before she came here. So absolutely no relation to this at all. One of the best coders I've ever met, he had a French degree, nothing to do with law at all. So I would say originally when this kind of journey was happening, the industry was new, the unicorn in this sense would have been a lawyer that has a really good tech geeky side that came across to the dark side and started doing tech with us. That would have been the perfect ideal candidate. That stayed for a little while. It's certainly not the case anymore. Being like an innovation team, you want diversity of thought. So that means diversity of people as well. So yes, you'll want lawyers, you'll want really techie people, you'll want coders, you want developers, but then you'll want the chefs, you want the French linguists, you want all of these different ideas coming in. So I know it's not a very clear answer of what should I do. I think the main things that I would look for now is, do you have a passion for independent thought and initiative? Are you able to provide those two things? The significant proper training we can provide, we're able to do that now because we're mature enough, and most law firms are able to train you up in those things. Are you passionate about legal tech? Do you know what it's about? Do you have that initiative, independent thought that's, again, similar to what Lauren was saying in the startup sense? You've got to be going out and doing this and getting it for yourself and having that kind of drive, because we're an innovation team, right? We're here to solve issues, make new paths, do new things, and you need that independent thought and initiative to do that.
Great, thanks, James. Bhavisa, do you have anything to add on that?
I would, yeah. So what James was saying about diversity of thought is absolutely bang on. I find that the biggest successes we've had as a team is when we've brought different skill sets and variety of thought together. So that's what really makes the difference. And, you know, I haven't come from a legal background. I wouldn't necessarily even think that you'd need a technical background to come into legal tech, because you can learn that, you know, you can get trained up on that. I think it's having that curiosity and being open to learn, because the more you can understand the mindset of a lawyer and how they work, the more likely you are to deliver solutions that really suit their need and really fit the problem that they're trying to solve. So I don't necessarily think you need to come with a specific background. It's that mindset and that personality.
Yeah, brilliant. In terms of people breaking into the industry, are there any tips you can give in terms of how they would approach applying for the roles, or any background knowledge they can get, any courses they can take, in addition to what you've just said there, to try and get ahead of the pack?
So one of the challenges that we always find is not necessarily the technology solutions or understanding the technology solutions. It's the people. So if you want to get ahead of it and try and get into this space, I would say actually think about change management. Think about the skills that you need in that space. It's the stakeholder management, the communication. How can you do that in an effective way and in a time efficient way as well, bearing in mind that lawyers are time poor. So actually being able to do all of that, build that softer skill set, will really put you in good stead to be successful in a role in legal tech, I would say.
I completely agree with Bhavisa there. So we talk about soft skills all the time as maybe something on the side or kind of running alongside the main part of the role. Soft skills in innovation legal tech are one of the main things. You need to be able to be adaptable. You need to be open to change. You need to be driving that change as well to a lot of people that don't necessarily want that change, maybe because it's brand new to them. They've got their ways of working. And we're saying, no, you should do it this way. This is much better. So being able to interact with stakeholders at all levels and to have that really good communication, to have that initiative, that independent thought, yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Great, thanks. Could you give us or the audience an idea and us an idea of the way in which your teams are structured themselves and how they fit into the rest of the infrastructure within a law firm these days? Because it's very difficult looking from the outside, I think, as to how it all works within law firms. So it'd be great to hear from you on that.
Sure, I can go ahead. So when I started at Addleshaw about 4.5 years ago, I think we were a team of 12-ish people. We're now an innovation group of 80. So it has changed significantly since I've been here. Specifically, the innovation and legal tech team, I think we're just over 50 odd people. So a team that size, now you have to have a certain amount of framework. You have to have career pathways. You have to be showing your ROI in much more mature ways than what we would have had to have done 4.5 years ago. So the structure of it is we have a large innovation group that encompasses the innovation legal technology team. We have a managed legal services team. We have a research and knowledge services team. And then we have our consulting team. So that forms part of the wider innovation group. And like I said, being 80 people, that is a significant chunk of the firm. So we are a group alongside our finance groups, alongside our real estate, our disputes, and our corporate teams. We're also a group there. So it is very, very heavily invested by Addleshaws. A lot of thought and frankly money goes into this team. If we're talking about the structure of it, it's we have our graduates, we have our legal technologists, we have senior legal technologists, we have senior managers, we have heads of, we have directors. So there's a lot of levels there, and it is very, very well defined now. Again, I think we're one of the few, probably alongside Eversheds, that we've had to put thought into that structure. So we were talking about that there isn't the same career pathways, and that it's certainly not as mature as the traditional legal route. But you'll see more and more law firms having a better structure around this now, because it is becoming a bigger thing. It is becoming a bigger industry, and we have to put those career pathways in place.
Brilliant, thanks.
And yeah, just like James says, we've spent a lot of time over the years putting some real thought and progress into those career paths. Again, similarly, we've got about 80 plus people that work in kind of what we call service excellence across the firm. And we are structured slightly differently to other law firms in that we're made up of a central team that sits under central IT, as well as legal technologists that sit within individual practice groups. But we work very heavily and very closely together. And the reason that we're structured that way is that you can then have the legal technologists that almost have the deep understanding of how their practice group works and how technology can support specific use cases within that practice group. And then you've got the central team that have the breadth of knowledge across the technology solutions, but also the depth of technical expertise in terms of what those solutions can do and how they can be configured or suited to specific business problems. So we work very closely with the legal technologists to deliver to suit their needs and understand their use cases. And we do often get people that kind of move from the central teams to practice groups or vice versa, just to be able to get new experiences and new challenges. And again, we've got a grad scheme as well that rotates between the central team and the practice group team, so they get experience of both sides as well.
Fantastic, thanks. Just a sort of an additional question, really. We've got a very diverse range of people as part of the ELTA organization and as members. Are you seeing opportunities internationally for people within the legal tech space? And is it possible for someone working in, let's say, the London office to move and work in the Middle East, in Asia, etc., or the US? Be interested to know a bit more about that.
I can step in on that. So that 80 plus team of people that I spoke about, every single one of those is UK based, bar one person. and that person is based out in the Middle East. The reason for that was because they wanted to move out there for their own personal reasons, but also as a firm, we wanted to make sure that, you know, we do have good traction within the UK offices, but we wanted to make sure we have the same level of traction and engagement within our international offices. So actually by supporting that individual to move out to the Middle East, they've been able to make a huge amount of progress and raise a lot of awareness across our Middle East offices in terms of what is available and what is possible with legal technology at the moment. And we're starting now to engage a little bit more in our other international offices in Europe and in Asia. We are getting traction, but I think the biggest amount of traction is going to be in having people on the ground that are focused on this. At the moment, we're kind of reliant on champions and kind of getting enthusiastic and engaged lawyers to do that for us, which is good, but it only gets us so far. I will continue to beat the drum in terms of trying to get resource in those regions as much as possible, because it makes the world of difference.
Great. Yeah, I think maybe it's early days, but it's certainly heading that way. Paul, what are you seeing in terms of sort of international legal tech roles?
Yeah, growing slowly. I mean, the US is obviously one of the leading jurisdictions for legal innovation. A lot of their roles generally they like people to be a former lawyer and have the license to practice in the state that they'll be based in. So there's a big kind of emphasis on that side of things, to our points earlier. But yeah, there are others that are building up. You know, Benelux is growing. Netherlands is a particular sort of hotspot. Germany, parts of France, and Spain and Portugal as well. You know, they've got lots of law firms out there who are now sort of championing and getting on that legal innovation journey. Not to discount either Singapore, Hong Kong, and Australia as well, out in the Far East as well. And I think India is really another jurisdiction that shouldn't be overlooked at this moment in time, where law firms are now sort of really getting on that track as well. So it's really interesting. The world hasn't exploded yet, but there's little pockets that are sort of popping up here and there that are really, you know, come onto the radar and really trying to do what others here in the UK, like Bhavisa and James's firms have been doing as well. But I think, James, you moved out from the UK, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly, Paul. So you could almost copy and paste what Bhavisa said. We've got 80 odd people and one person's moved out to the Middle East, and in this instance it's me. So yeah, I moved out to the Middle East roughly end of last year. We were seeing huge expansion in the Middle East. We see it as a massive opportunity. It's a large part of our firm. And wanting to have a physical presence on the ground is actually quite a big thing. It's still, we're a global firm. We have offices all over the place, but we still want to have that presence. You need to have that champion that's directly related back to the UK team. And we found the exact same thing as Bhavisa. Being out there has enabled us to open a lot more doors that probably might not have been open beforehand. So although we are very much kind of hybrid working, it's a world of remote working at the moment, I do think that face-to-face, being able to meet everyone within an office, them understanding why you're there and them understanding what the capabilities are back in that hub back in the UK has been really, really good for us. So likewise, let's try and get some more people in other offices. But yeah, it's a kind of watch this space point.
Great, thanks, James. Lauren, what are you seeing? You know, in terms, you're obviously in a tech company, you're growing, you're opening new offices, etc. Is that a selling point for people joining Robin AI, that there might be opportunities to work overseas?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had quite a few of our London team move to New York. So that I think is like definitely an interesting proposition for a lot of people. Yeah, I would say that probably in really big established global legal tech companies, you probably have more like actually built in kind of paths to go and work in different offices. I would say like at this stage of startup, it's much more about like what the business needs. So 75% of our revenue comes from the US. So it makes sense for us to have more team based in New York. Our CEO moved to New York in August last year. So it really is much more sort of, it's more driven by the demands of the business rather than like actual career paths to kind of go to different places like you might get in more established law firms or more established big corporates. But I think that will change over time. I think it's a really interesting proposition for like our junior legal specialist, for example, to have the opportunity to either go on to comment, work directly with clients, or to go and work internationally as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really exciting. I'm going to try now to go through some of the questions that the audience are asking. We've covered some of the points within some of the questions, so I'll just pick some out if that's okay. So for Hyacinth Arnold, hello, I often notice that job applications and offers in the legal tech market are for senior profiles. Do you think you should opt for unsolicited applications when you're in a middle or junior role? Paul, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it depends on the job and what the requirement is, and what that actual opportunity is about, and what the hiring manager wants. It's a bit of a challenging one to answer. However, I would always urge somebody to ensure that their CV is as tailored to the job description as possible, and it's highlighting all the transferable skills that you've got. I mean, we've mentioned them earlier. Bhavisa and James and Lauren have already said about soft skills, the communication, the stakeholder management, the stakeholder engagement, how you speak to people, how you bring them on a journey, and how you add the value to their day. So I think from that point of view, it depends how junior you are to the opportunity. I guess it depends whether or not you've got the prerequisite experience. There's no harm in applying, but obviously don't be disappointed if you're not selected for an interview. But I would urge anybody listening to this, as a general principle, to make sure that your CV reflects the job description as much as possible, and make sure that your CV is not just in your current job, but in previous jobs where you've done things that are, the job description require you to do, that it's spread throughout your previous careers as well. Obviously, don't make it up. If you haven't done it, don't put it in. But where you have got some skills and some experience, then make sure that you put it in. And also perhaps a covering letter as well, explaining why you think that you're suitable for a particular opportunity, would probably help as well.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And from what the panel have said, the good thing in this industry is that there are still ways in from various different pathways. So, persistence beats resistance. Often, the more you do, you'll get a better chance to break in to the industry. I've got a question here from Harris Hyder for everyone. For someone who has made the transition into legal tech / CLM 3 to 4 years ago, with AI and strategy knowledge using multiple platforms, any advice or tips from the panel on where to find the right opportunities, both in the UK and abroad? Does anyone want to jump on that one?
This is one of my hot takes, which is that I think a lot of the legacy kind of CLM type technology is just going to die a death because of AI. So I think having a glorified Dropbox with some workflows and charging people hundreds of thousands of dollars for it is just not going to fly anymore. So would suggest that you look at legal AI roles, things that are actually touching substantive legal work, not just the kind of workflows around it. I think the shift is really about moving from a world of like micro optimizations. So you had like your DocuSign, and you're kind of like doing a micro optimization to connect like how a document goes and gets signed, to like really large scale efficiency gains, which are being driven by the fact that we can now use like generative AI, large language models, advanced machine learning techniques to actually do substantive legal work now. So Harris, would suggest that you look at legal AI companies. There's a few companies both in the UK and the US, I would say, that are really like leading the charge on this. And obviously, like if you've worked in and around sort of contract management and things before, like you'll broadly understand the landscape there of like the processes that you're trying to solve for, and some of the challenges that customers will be facing. So yeah, that's my hot take and advice. Thanks, Lauren.
Controversially announcing the end of CLMs there on this webinar, so thanks for that. Well, it's another reason to always go into this industry with an agile mindset, I think, because the industry is changing so fast, and AI will change the products that have been out there over the last few years. So that's something definitely to keep in mind. Moving on, there's a question from Leanne Wong. What advice would you give to someone from a reg tech background considering legal tech roles?
there's lots of interesting opportunities in and around back office functions for law firms with things like anti-money laundering, perhaps sanction screening, actual sort of building efficiencies so that lawyers can spend more time doing like actual fee earning work and less time doing admin and faff. I just suspect that someone from a reg tech background will have the kind of know-how to understand like how to navigate regulatory type processes that touch on law firms. There's also a ton of stuff to do with the client accounts that law firms operate. So there's actually quite a few very cool companies that are doing a lot in and around sort of regulatory processes that impact law firms.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, reg tech is a big growing industry. Does anyone else have anything they wanted to mention on that?
I would,
Yeah,
I would add to that. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Bhavisa.
I was just going to say, I would add to that, like there's nothing that we do as a in the legal tech space without talking to our governance and compliance team to make sure that what we're doing is sound on the regulatory front. So yeah, there's opportunities in legal tech more generally, I would say, even with that background.
Yeah, agreed, especially with Gen AI coming out and all the policies and procedures we've had to make in the last year. We work very closely with the OGC. I also think that's quite a niche area, to be honest. So we focus primarily on working with the lawyers and the legal technology side. If you're coming with a reg tech background and that sort of mindset, you could definitely carve out a niche there, I think.
It's really interesting. Thank you. We've got a few minutes left. So perhaps if you've got any final thoughts about this webinar and any advice to give to people looking to break into the industry, that'd be great. Maybe starting with you, Lauren.
I think being humble and earnest about what you do and don't know is really important. I talk to a lot of lawyers who are very sort of I would say probably not humble, as in think that they could waltz into a startup and immediately smash it on all fronts and stuff, having never like run a small business or like understood like the commercial realities of operating with like a really lean team. So I think go in with your eyes open, be humble, like be a good listener, like try and understand the business before you start trying to like make suggestions. I'm sure this also applies to people that you guys hire into your teams as well, Bhavisa and James, but you know, just because something has worked somewhere else doesn't necessarily mean it's going to immediately work for your business or for your process or the thing that you're trying to optimize. So I would say the best skill you can have is being a really good listener, not thinking about what the next thing you want to say is or what you want to propose, but really trying to have a deep understanding of how people, process, and kind of technology fits together within the organization, and then sort of add on your layer of knowledge and insight onto that is a lot more valuable and helpful than people trying to come into startups and being like, well, I did a thing one time and I know it's going to work here. It's like not a helpful mindset.
Great, thanks, Lauren. Bhavisa?
Yeah, I would have said what Lauren was going to say actually in terms of being open and listening, but I'll pick another one. So the other one I would pick is resilience. So, you know, lawyers are, like I said, they're time poor. So they want solutions that are going to work first time, and they want it to do everything and anything that's going to help them in their day to day. That's not necessarily how legal tech works. It's evolving. Sometimes it's not going to quite hit the mark. So you need to go into those conversations with a little bit of resilience. You know, if it doesn't work first time, go back, get the feedback, and then try again. It's all about understanding what is it that's missing and where is the value really going to be driven from, and trying to aim towards that. So just because something is not initially successful, it's about getting yourself up and thinking about how you can turn that around.
Great, thanks. And James?
I think a good way of looking at it is look at the team you're joining. You're joining an innovation team within a law firm, right? So something I always say to the new team members that join us, we're not looking for robots that receive an input and then produce an output. That is the last thing that we want within this. We want people that can look at a process and look at it with independent thought and initiative. I think I've said that 30 times this webinar, but that's the main things we're looking for: independent thought and initiative. Look at a process, understand that you'll have your part to play within that process, but then looking at the wider process, what else is there to change? Questioning, is this the right way of doing it? Not just simply doing it because that's how we've been doing it. The whole point of our team is innovation and legal technology to change and adapt and to make sure that we're doing the best, most efficient ways of that process. So know your part within it, know that you've got to do some work, but think critically, think wider, think at the overall process. And yeah, just bear in mind the team that you're joining. It's an innovation team.
Absolutely. Paul, any final thoughts?
I think everybody summed it up pretty well, to be honest with you. I think, you know, fundamentally, before you go looking for a job, you need to understand kind of where you want to be. As everybody has said, you know, it's a growing landscape and AI is a big thing. I think some of the questions are alluding to, you know, cross-training. So if you can understand certain solutions and certain products and come with a little bit of product knowledge about certain solutions, great. But like James and Bhavisa have said, you know, you'll get training. It's really more about what you're bringing as a human being to the table, the independent thought, the ability to think on your feet, the ability to speak to people that are time poor or perhaps slightly resistant. I've had this process nailed to a T for 20, 30, 40 years. Why are you going to use a piece of technology that's going to make me do something different and get me to do it different? And I'm not guaranteed that output is going to be what I'm expecting it to be, and all these kind of reasons why not to do something rather than reasons why to do something. So it's about a lot of it will be about your kind of human interaction skills. If you're someone that gets irritated or frustrated quite quickly by things, it's probably not going to be the right career for you. But actually, if you've got quite a logical mind, if you've got quite good soft skills and an understanding and a good ear for listening and so on, I think you'll do really well in the right legal tech team or software company.
Thanks, Paul. And
thanks, Ray.
Yeah, just wanted to say, as we wrap up, thanks very much to all the panelists for sparing your very valuable time today and for the insights, which have been really helpful. Just want to also say a big thank you to ELTA for supporting this webinar and promoting it, and also to Lisa and Julie in the background for helping put it on. Finally, massive thank you to everyone who's tuned in today, and I hope it's been worthwhile and informative, and hope everyone has a great day, and see you soon.